Yeah, baby, we're back.
Yes, inside a boardroom this time.
Woo!
Okay, we've upgraded from just a loud lobby.
And by upgrading, he means we got kicked out of the lobby. We were asked to move to a boardroom.
It's weird. When
a free boardroom, though.
It's kind of cool when you get removed from a place.
They're like, sir, you're not allowed to sit in these seats. We're bringing you to a suite. That's essentially what happened.
This never happens to us. This is incredible.
Sir, you've been kicked out of this flight. Welcome to this private jet that will take you where you need to go.
so pretty incredible. Wine glasses for some water. You know how we do.
Pinkies out, baby.
No,
we got an amazing guest. I mean, you've heard his voice. You know him. You've watched him play. You love him. Maybe you hate him. Maybe it's one of the two. Maybe his name means a place you go poop in Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, unless you're driving, put your hands together for the one, the only, Brian Dunseth, a.k.a. Dunny.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I saw you. We rode the elevator together, and I was like,
we did.
You know what? Coincidentally, we rode the elevator together, and I said, hey, man, we'd love to have you on the podcast. And we had gotten off on the same floor.
Yep.
Didn't even realize I'm not staying on your floor.
Oh, really?
I
see how that works.
I just got off on the
Solid
same
game.
Again,
Solid
that's that
game.
New York in us. We follow you if you say no to us.
I walked out, I took a right,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden he probably took like 4 steps to the left and then went.
Dude, but I thought I was
He
on the
did
correct
that like
floor.
cable guy walk.
I went to the room and I was like hitting, putting my key card. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, it's not working because while we've been here, we're at the Marriott right here in Orlando for the MLS
The
All-Star
luxurious Marriott by the highway with construction going on.
game. So, but my key card has stopped working twice since I've been here, so I have to go replace it.
Because you're on the wrong floor each time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is.
I'm
right?
like, dude, I didn't hear you
It
trying
works.
to get in the
I
room.
was trying to get the door open, and then I started knocking because I'm assuming he's in there, and I'm just bang, bang, bang. I'm like, yo, how come nobody's opening or whatever? And luckily nobody opened the door. 'Cause
Oh my gosh.
would have been a nightmare. I was on the wrong floor. So
At least, have you guys ever walked into your hotel room after checking in, and there's somebody in the bed in the hotel room?
Yes,
No.
and I'm always like, I didn't ask, but thank you.
I didn't order her.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, see, I didn't get a her.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
no.
you
No,
guys
it
said-
happened to me once. I
got a
walked in, and I see a cup of coffee, a little bit of steam coming out of it. I'm like, huh? And then I hear the toilet flush, and I'm like, oh no,
boy.
this is gonna be awkward.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you not hear the door open? And he had headphones on.
Wow.
So I'm like,
Wait,
trying,
so he's a headphone pooper in the bathroom?
pooper headphone. I phone everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
You can play music. You don't have to put the headphones in.
My doctor said I think he might have been on a phone call.
Okay, maybe
Okay.
that makes more sense.
That makes a lot of
But
sense. now that I'm
pooping,
thinking about it.
taking a business call while you're pooping, that's a bit.
You're a savage.
Yes.
No, and I respect it.
By the way, I'm a savage.
Yeah, no, I
I
respect
hit the
it.
mute and then back
I
to
would never.
unmute.
I have too much class. I would
Oh
never.
really? No, in case
Some of your
there's a
best
split
tweets.
splash.
Not even some of your
Yeah.
best tweets.
Oh, writing? Yeah, writing. I do some of my best work
Yeah.
on there.
I get
you
some
know?
of my best jokes. Shower or bathroom is a very creative area for some strange reason. It's a creative inducing area.
So, Brian,
This is why we brought Jan.
I'm enjoying this. What do we got? Like,
Yeah, 5 minutes in. All we've talked about is
Brian,
highlight poop.
we hear you a lot when we watch RSL games, right?
Mm-hmm.
On ESPN Plus when we're watching them from New York. You're also one of the hosts of Counterattack on Sirius XM.
Great show.
You know what? I think we can't start this show given that I think you are our first RSL representative that's been on our show.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
We had a pre-recorded segment from RSL Rabbi. No, the Rapids Rabbi. Never mind. This is the first RSL.
That's
Sorry,
right.
the R confused
They
me.
hate each other,
Do they?
Colorado Rapids and RSL
Yeah.
fans. Yeah.
Yes.
You guys haven't talked to like Beckerman or Ramondo?
We've
or...
begged to have
hasn't- it
Beckerman
hasn't.
on.
Really?
Pre-haircut, post-haircut.
Yeah.
Whatever happens with his hair.
It hasn't happened, but we know there are
Petke is what
RSL
we wanted. We'll talk about it in a second.
RSL,
Just because he's from New York.
there are RSL fans listening. So, given that you are that representative currently,
'Kay.
and there is a lot of news at the moment
Yeah.
regarding the head coach, who is Mike Petke, who is suspended after, initially when we saw the tirade after the Leagues Cup game. I thought he was just mad that he had to play a Leagues Cup game to begin with. You know, but clearly he was upset with refs, and instead of talking so specifically about what happened in this particular scenario, I kind of want to talk about Petke as a whole, because we are huge fans of him, and a lot of people are huge fans of him. When he does fire back at referees, he's very public about it.
Poor Trey and poor printer.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. So
Especially when you have a printing commercial deal. And
Do you
and the printing company's like, my man, my printer worked.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It was operator error.
So let's kind of figure out or at least talk about what is this lore of Mike Petke? How is he seen to RSL fans?
And how's he accepted in one of the most white cities in the world?
I call it Disneyland for it's Disneyland for white people. Yeah, it's Salt Lake City.
If the snow melted on a ski slope and became people, you have Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And you got Petke, who comes with his abrasive East Coast attitude.
Yeah.
How is that seen?
Yeah, I mean, so I do a show with Mike, the coach's show on Tuesday nights, and we do a podcast afterwards. And I've gotten to know Mike really, really well.
It's the coach's show, the television show, right?
We've
Seen clips of it.
Yeah, so it's okay. So how do I unpack Mike? So I played against Mike, and he came in the league right after me. You know, he had the breathe right strip, and he had the bleached hair, and he was an animal and crime of the century, and I love New York, and all those things. And he was this iconic force that, within the context of how he played the game, he knew his strengths, he knew his weaknesses, and he knew what he was capable of inciting, which was the passion and a fan base and the culture of a fan base that he kind of expressed their passion on the field. Then the transition into coaching, and obviously not really knowing what he's doing at the time. And then all of a sudden he's taking over the New York Red Bulls, and he's got Thierry Henry, and he's got Tim Cahill. He's got all these big iconic players.
Right.
And then when he suspends Thierry Henry, and Thierry Henry's like sitting on the bench and twiddling his thumbs, and like all of a sudden you're like, man, this guy's got he's got some cojones.
Yeah.
Good for him. So then he comes to Real Salt Lake, and he actually was kind of co-hosting on Counterattack for a little bit before he got the job to go to Real Monarchs and then get in the RSL job. So fast forward. Mike's passion for the game resonates with his players and with a fan base, especially in Salt Lake City, that always feels like they're disrespected. Not that they're the underdog, but because Salt Lake City and they don't have superstars and no one really wants to be there.
There's like a general indifference to that market outside of Salt Lake City.
100%.
I think they know it. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Like, for example, outside of Univision games, there's no national games for Real Salt Lake this year.
Oh, yeah.
Not a single one. So as a broadcaster, it's fantastic because I got 34 games on the schedule.
Yeah.
I'm not like Kevin Egan in Atlanta where I got 14 games on the schedule because ESPN and Fox won every single game.
Right.
So with Mike, you know, when he comes on, we do the pregame interviews or we do the postgame interviews. There's something there that people love because, you know, we're as a league, for me, we got too many. We don't even have real heroes, but we don't have a lot of villains outside of Zlatan.
Right.
And outside of kind of going back, like, who were the villains in the days? It was
Leonard, right?
It was Stephen Lenhart. It was Alan Gordon. It was Alejandro Moreno, but because he just fell down every time the ball was around the box. That's why he was a villain. But outside of that,
he still slips and falls for to try to get lawsuits.
You got to be in the state of Illinois.
Buddy.
Get big old payouts in Illinois.
Buddy.
I rolled my ankle, $50,000. Here you go.
A little bit of ice on the sidewalk. I'll take a check, please.
Sir, it's July.
Slip it down. It's okay.
I was just as surprised as you are.
What happened? So with Mike, you know, first it started with the printer, and you know, this unbridled passion.
Right.
And then it was actually a year ago. He gets suspended every July. It's the third July in a row he's been suspended since he's taken over. So last year,
Family vacation.
we're in Minnesota. Well, hold on. I'll tell you how Mrs. Petke, Kim Petke, feels about all this.
Okay.
And so then we were in Minnesota and we do the post-game interview. He's been kicked out of the game, and he comes back on camera. And our producer was like, Kenny Neal. We're like, all right, Mike, thanks. And our producer Kenny Neal was like, well, this is a new one, and all of a sudden,
Cover.
So all of a sudden, it was Kenny. Well, we got something a little bit different. Mike Petke wants to come back on camera, and I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, what's up, Mike?
This doesn't
It
happen.
never happens.
For anyone who doesn't know, this doesn't ever happen.
No.
The coaches don't I remember, was it Bobby Valentine, the Mets coach? He got kicked off. I'm not a Mets fan, but he put on one of those, those Groucho Marx fake mustache with the nose glass and came back in regular
stood
clothes.
in the hallway.
And kind of pretended to not be on he clearly got in trouble for it. Coaches don't come back when they get in trouble.
When they don't have
or when
to.
they get suspended. And he did.
Yeah, so he comes back on. He fillets everybody, fillets VAR, and then he gets a big old suspension.
And he has the printouts. He has like the.
So that was just that was the first time.
That was
this,
the first
this
time.
is the second one. He's like, I don't know if they're watching like The Simpsons upstairs in the VAR booth, but I don't know how you. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
So that's the second one. And now, obviously, everything that's happened this past week. I wasn't there. I was camping with my family. I get back home. It's Tigres. Everyone's like, oh, League Cup, what does it really mean? I love the idea of Leagues Cup because I want to see organic rivalry with Liga MX, and I want to see the growth, and I want to see the partnership within the context of they have this unbelievable amount of money to be spending. They are great, fantastic clubs and players with all this rich history.
Huge fan base.
And let's see exactly how this translates in the competition because we have CONCACAF Champions League and everything else is whatever. So Mike can never be accused of not taking Leagues Cup seriously. He lost his mind. The cat came on the field. He was pulling his players away. The red card came out. He said what he said. He would have deserved the red card. And then whatever happened in the tunnel, obviously I wasn't there. We see how the verbiage was from Real Salt Lake and Major League Soccer. It's some of the strongest language I've ever seen Don Garber have. It's 25,000. It's a 3-game suspension. RSL suspended him for 2 weeks. No contact with the team. I'm assuming it's up to 35,000 total when it's all said and done. So it's a strong statement.
That's
now,
a big one.
It's a big one. And so now the question begs, the language that is being attributed to him, it's tough. It's tough to overcome something like that. And when that becomes public, we're kind of in a world right now where there's a super big pushback, right? For especially with certain language used at various levels of leadership. And when something like this goes down, I think the punishment now, for me, trying to figure out a way to hold off complete judgment until we hear his side of the story and how he comes back, whether that's in some type of written format, public format, and when he steps in front of the cameras and has to answer verbally for his actions, I think we'll all have a little bit more clarity of what kind of the total situation looks like. But it's not good.
It's not good. And, as two Latinos, we've had mixed conversations about what this word means because there was an era where when you grew up, you could say it and no one knew it meant that.
Yeah.
But if one, I always
it
say
was slang. It was like taken in slang.
But it was
context.
it's like the F word. You almost forget it means like sex. Like you know what I mean? Like you say, oh, give me that effing thing, give me that effing thing. You do forget. So like for us, it becomes one of these things of like, well, all right, well, if one person's offended, then we shouldn't use it anymore. And then I would be interested to hear what he thinks. He's a white dude. He might not know what that word means, even though he's been around Latinos a bunch. Yeah. You might not know. So who knows? Yeah. And he might not certainly know the power of it. So I'm interested to see what happens next. But I will say, it can't be written. He's got a pretty much a history of showing up and speaking directly to a camera. Yeah. So I kind of got to feel like that may have to be the way he responds to this.
I agree. And the hard part about this is I know Mike. I don't speak for Mike. I can only speak to the friendship that we have cultivated over the years with doing the shows and hanging out and getting to know one another in the context of analyst, head coach, conversations about the game, and then kind of cultivating a show that is less tactics, less coach's show, more lifestyle, more, hey, when we played, or, the LGBTQ community or Pride Month and what that means. I mean, 3 weeks ago, we had Laura Harvey on our show, and it was the first time publicly she had confirmed that she'd come out publicly.
Okay.
It was the first time on camera. And it was this really momentous occasion where it was like, it was a powerful moment. And she told the story about, how she told her parents and everything. And she was talking to us about, in the midst of all the havoc that was the Women's World Cup team on the backside of Thailand, and then the Trump tweets and all of that, about the story about how Megan Rapinoe first took a knee, or was planning to take a knee, when they were in Seattle with the Seattle Rain. So it was kind of like this really cool, open conversation about actions and words, and making sure there was a cultural environment within the locker room where everyone truly kind of understood what could potentially happen. If you can make whatever, I tell my boys, you can literally do whatever you want, but there's consequences for every single action that you take. So when they were talking about the Rapinoe thing, okay, here's what's going to happen. Let's talk through what potential scenario. So all this fascinating stuff. So knowing Mike, I can see the red mist. I can understand losing your mind. I can see the fiery passion. But now how do you verbally kind of overcome what the conversation has now turned into, which was a red card finishing the game against a Tigres team that's a fantastic team, and now being suspended heavily in the biggest fine ever given to a head coach in Major League Soccer.
I growing up, I don't know that I would say what I had was anger issues, but no one teaches you.
I would say that.
Yeah. I was also gonna say I think I fixed it, and clearly I have not.
And nobody's gonna tell me any different.
Yeah, and I'll get real angry if you tell me I haven't fixed it. But like no one, growing up the way I did, no one tells you. I didn't have a father figure for a good portion. No one tells you, hey, that's not how you act. You see your friends do it, and they're like, well, they're getting their way, so that's how I'm gonna be. And someone's like, I remember I had a teacher who was like, all right, you do what you want. Just know that when you don't see anything else besides the one thing you're mad at, you're causing damage. It's when you come out of it that you have to fix that collateral damage. And are you willing to do something that may ruin all these other things on the way to get whatever you feel that justification is? And that's when I'm like, oh, shit happens when you go nuts. It's not just not everyone just understands, well, of course he was angry. That guy scuffed his shoes. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's other things that come out of it. So I had to learn that. So let's see what happens. And it's funny, like we joke around about the East Coast attitude and the fieriness. But
we call him the gulliest coach in Major League Soccer.
I think, for sure. But he's, now hopefully there's a way where he can clarify what happened and move on. Let's talk a little bit about RSL and about you as well. You come out of playing, you go into broadcasting, you're calling the games. RSL's going through this weird period, sort of, the post-Jason Christ era was touch and go for a while. Cal Beckerman is playing. He's about 76 years old, which is pretty dope. He's still in the league. You're calling.
No one's older than DeMarcus Beasley.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, he's 78.
DBs, my man.
Yeah, he's the best. So you're kind of calling the games during this time. Is there ever a thing where you're like, you know what, just let me in that locker room? Like, we were able to fix it when we were playing. Like, we can fix it. This is before, obviously, you've started having some of the younger players and some success.
I never wanted to coach. I never wanted to be. I was fascinated by the role of the GM more than I was the idea of coaching. Because
corner office.
Coaching, yeah, man. I mean, like, coaching is owners hire, players fire. Like as a player, you can, in a sense, you can control your path. You're responsible for your path. Like you have to think about your body and the decisions that you're making, and it's about performance. When you're a coach,
you can get as fat as you want.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I'm prepared to be coached.
Yeah, but it was more like you can do these, and I've talked to Mike about this before. But like the coaching staff, Tyrone Marshall and Freddie Juarez and all these, you can have this unbelievable like approach to the game. And okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is where we see their weaknesses. This is our strength. Blah blah blah. And literally, okay, this is how we're gonna start, and we're gonna play. And this is the way they close down. And when you hit that ball, don't take your touch in, take your touch up, and then you'll get out of pressure. And all of a sudden, that first ball comes over, and the player takes that first touch inside. And you're like, what in the F? I mean, we literally worked on this all week. What? And the ball's in the back of the net. It's like the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You're like, we had a plan. Execute the plan. Like, it can all go wrong. So for a coach, I was like, I don't want to be responsible for a group of players that ultimately could let me down.
Yeah.
And, I found it interesting. There was a quote the other day from Julian Nagelsmann, who took over at RB Leipzig. He said, and he's considered one of the brightest young coaches. He said, coaching is, the way I look at it, is 30% tactics, 70% social management.
Okay.
Which is
just
real. I mean,
kind of just following their Twitter accounts and Instagram handles and really see what's going on. And
don't tweet that. Don't tweet that.
Dude, your grammar's lacking right now. You know what I mean? You trying to pop? But, you want to start? You need to get more likes.
But the 70% is like, hey, how are you? How are you feeling today?
Oh, sure.
You feeling better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything I can do? And it's almost that was the assistant's job. So like the assistants, they get to play good cop, bad cop.
Totally.
Manager's got to be the bad guy because there's only 11 positions on the field. Mm-hmm. And when I take you off, I don't want to see you throwing your hands up in the air. And when you're not playing it, I don't want to see you bitching and moaning. He doesn't like me.
Yeah.
So that's why
So as someone who played then, how did you feel about what's going on in Atlanta with just...
I was just having this conversation the other day.
I mean, the mutiny are back, baby. Or at least the term.
100%. It's one of those where I think there's a couple layers of that one, because when Frank de Boer's announced, you see Frank de Boer as a player and you're like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
You see Frank de Boer as a coach at Ajax and you're like, standard system from youth to top. Okay, this is who they do. And then you look at Frank de Boer at Inter Milan, and then you look at Frank de Boer at Crystal Palace, and you're like, whoa, that's not Tata. That's not the ideology of the way Tata. Why wouldn't you go out and get someone that, at least within the structure of how they're trying to play, get somebody similar? And then when you see the product on the field, and from the opening game and CONCACAF Champions League, you're like, whoa, this looks nothing like the team in December that was throttling everybody.
Right.
And it can't just be Miggy Almiron. Although Miggy Almiron's first touch is forward, and he's fantastic, and Petke's a little bit more side to side and not as explosive going forward. And I was having this conversation. Miggy was like focal point.
Yeah.
Petke might be the best complementary piece there was in South America, but it just feels different.
Yeah.
And so then when you see Petke throwing his hands up, then you see the quotes from Leandro Gonzalo Pires, and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah, sums up.
Everything we were assuming, everything we were talking about, he just like, okay, guys, here's the curtain. I'm going to open this.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. This is what we all think. Help.
Yeah.
And then, okay.
It's
no,
like he was
I
like,
respect
y'all were
Frank.
right the whole damn time.
Yeah. I respect Frank. He's
Yeah.
amazing. We're going to work hard. We're going to.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like in the movie Get Out when they take a photo and then the person's like real soul it starts to speak, you know.
Right.
I couldn't even get through that movie.
Oh, it was great. It was a great movie. But it's interesting because going back to just to coaching styles, right? Petke does not appear to be someone who is disrespected, right? It seems like the respect is clearly there, and the players do play for him. And I'm curious about the end of last season, which was that's why I feel like I was watching a lot because that playoff push, right?
Yeah.
And making it to the playoffs, and then being
Also, how the youth players reacted so positively.
sure
to it.
LAFC, right? You guys have so what was I always feel feels like a team that is the promise is always there, the hope, and I genuinely always like, man, I hope Petke's happy this season. You know what I mean? Like I genuinely care.
Yeah.
So what are the expectations at the moment right now during this All-Star break? And do you think RSL are going to be kind of in the same position fighting for those last few playoff spots?
So I think I'll start here. I think there's the haves and the have-nots. The haves are obviously the Toronto FCs, the Atlanta Uniteds, the LAFCs, the LA Galaxies, the ones that are capable of going out and spending roughly $20 million on a couple players, right? So you've got those difference makers, and then they're going to go all in on the target allocation money players, and then it's about the philosophical approach to the staff of how they want to build the pieces of the puzzle. By the way, I love Bomber Jacket Bob Bradley.
Oh yeah,
sure.
I love Cocky Bob. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's by far my favorite. So and then you have kind of everyone else. So then you kind of like start tiering it, right? You have Seattle that still spends a lot of money, but isn't spending like crazy monopoly money, but still spending a lot of money. Then you got like kind of Portland spending money. Then you got New York Red Bulls and NYCFC where you're seeing a philosophical change. And then everyone else starts to like kind of calibrate in this weird section of, are we a third place team or are we a 10th place team?
right.
And I'll tell you what, between third place and 10th place, they're all really similar.
It could be a player.
100%.
Yeah.
It could look one player, either addition or subtraction. It could mean third place or 10th place. So I think one of the cool things about Real Salt Lake, and I give credit to Garth Lagerwey and Craig Weibel, Garth up in Seattle, who was the original general manager in Salt Lake. They started the academy, the RSL Academy in Arizona, Casa Grande, because obviously Real Salt Lake's not known for producing soccer talent, so you kind of got to be a little bit different, much like Sporting Kansas City. You're not in an LA market. You're not in a huge
New
soccer
York or
culture.
Florida, yeah.
And so then the academy was built. Deloy Hansen dropped like $80 million in Salt Lake City. Everything was moved. It's an incredible facility. You've got the men's team, Utah Royals, Monarchs, the Development Academy. So you have this structure underneath this umbrella. You have an identity, and you have it all in Salt Lake City. And so then guys like a Bofo Saucedo, a Corey Baird, Brooks Lennon, an Aaron Herrera, a Donnie Toya, a Justin Glad, an Eric Holt, a Tate Schmidt, all those guys are homegrown players.
Yeah.
So then when you're looking at the
Who
lineup,
also play on the national team.
yeah. So they're all going to be
They're doing bits.
they're all going to be like they're going to be big parts of the under 23 team, and they were all big parts of the under 20 team for TAP, not the previous cycle, not in Poland. And so they're kind of deciding to build through, which is great. And one of the reasons why they were getting blown out last year is because they'd have like these childish, really stupid mistakes because they're kids just learning how to play the game.
Yeah.
They're all 19 and 20 and 21. Which sounds crazy because in Europe they're like, oh, they're seasoned pros.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., it takes a little bit more time. So for RSL, all the things they learned over the last season, I think they've put to use this season. I think they're still between a third-place team and a 10th-place team, all dependent upon momentum and the opponent. But they're a fun team to watch at home.
Yeah.
I think they've got to kind of recalibrate their identity away from home. Sometimes they're so concerned about the opponent. I'd love to see them be a little bit more confident about their style of play and kind of go in.
Make the opponent react to them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard because there's very few. LAFC is really the only well, I take that back. LAFC and Sporting Kansas City, in my mind, are really the only teams that play on the road the same way they play at home.
Right. I'd even say Red Bulls.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
press, yeah.
It's a good shout. It's an identity. NYCFC can never play that way because they're playing on a matchbox.
Hey, man.
in Yankee Stadium.
Hey, I'm wearing the shirt, man. No disrespect.
Yeah, when is Rio Tinto going to finally put in a home plate? Be a real stadium, will you?
Right up the road.
Yeah.
Salt Lake Bees.
Yeah. When you look at the landscape of the league from when you played and where we are now, it's a completely different league. What do you think is next? We've been asking a lot of people this. You know, we've been doing this podcast now for just about 4 years, and the league has changed dramatically in those 4 years. What do you think is going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years? Where do you see it going?
I think the collective bargaining agreement at the end of the year will adjust to where player movement is a little bit easier on the player side. I think that they will have to, if you're going to strike, now's the time to strike, especially with all of the expansion teams coming in and the absurd amount of money that's coming into play and essentially $500 million to start a new team with stadium, with infrastructure, with training facility. I've said
people are throwing themselves to give us that money. Us meaning the league. Yeah.
Not us specifically.
No, give us the money. We're throwing ourselves.
When LAFC came in, I was like, what can like $5,000 get me? Can I get like 0.5%?
Yeah, they got a bunch of owners anyway.
Yeah,
Why was one more? Yeah.
I said this a couple years ago. I think with the inclusion of target allocation money, we are going to see an incredible growth. But I would say in the next 5 years in particular, in the build-up to the 2026 World Cup in the United States, first order of business is getting closer to the model of Liga MX with regards to the amount of money available for players and player salary, because I think it takes you in a completely different stratosphere. Instead of having 3 top-tier players and then having the 3 more target allocation money players, imagine if you had 9 to 10 players on the field that were making around $1 million a year. You're talking complete difference makers in a lot of ways. You're talking
about like the Eredivisie, the 100%. Scandinavian league. Yeah.
And so I think the growth then also needs to include the fear of getting over the fear of being known as an import-export league. Like we have to be okay with selling our best players. We have to be okay with changing the identity of a league being not good enough to being like, hey man, there's some really damn good players over here. Yeah. I'm all for valuing your players and respecting the value of your players and not underselling your players. But at the same time, I think more and more that you sell, you become a viable option for clubs around the world. And I think that in the United States, with how many clubs come over, whether we're talking about Arsenal, we're talking about AC Milan, we're talking about branding, that we are in a deadly fight for credit cards and eyeballs right now.
Yeah.
So those are 2 important. I would say maybe the most important thing is figuring out the television broadcast deal going forward.
Yeah.
If you go to
Twitch or something,
if you just go to this, even if you go to just an ESPN Plus, the concern for all of that is you're just going to get the hardcores. And if you're just getting the hardcores, you're losing out on an opportunity to bring in a lot of neutrals. And
the guy sitting at a bar by himself going, hey, what's that? That becomes a fan. Absolutely.
100%.
I think the other thing about the point you're making about becoming comfortable with being a league where, like, you got your Miggies that'll come in and use it as a springboard to Europe. Yeah. The more we do that, the less we're going to keep paying these MLS premiums on players because people know that there's money here, and the players sometimes don't want to come because they're unsure if it helps. So you end up paying 3 or 4%, like 30 or 40% more for that player just because you're an MLS team.
There's one thing that Major League Soccer will never overcome, and they'll just never overcome. They'll never overcome the inability to play in Champions League.
That's true.
So,
sure.
I mean, no matter what, the quote-unquote best players in the world, if they have ambitions to play in Champions League or Europa League, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's something MLS will never be able to compete with. And as long as we're okay with that, as long as we're okay with understanding that, it's fine.
Yeah.
In the States, Liga MX is king.
Number one, yeah.
Premier League is number 2. And then everyone else is fighting for everything underneath.
Well, but all these European players, they don't get to play in the CONCACAF Champions League, so they're really missing out on the
real Champions
on the real Champions League.
Yeah.
So you got to feel bad for them a little bit.
Oh, you never been to San Salvador, my guy?
You want to know what I learned from JP Della Camera?
Yeah.
Walking up Saprissa Stadium with him, and he goes, "Let me teach you one important thing." I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "When we're doing a game, keep your head down when you're walking up the stairs." And I was like, "Why would I keep my head down walking up the stairs?" He's like, "Don't make eye contact, and if anything's thrown at you, keep your head down because it won't get in your eyes."
God bless CONCACAF.
Bags of urine, spears, coins, dodging bullets. He's like, "Keep the head down." And I was like,
Jeez.
He's like, "You can clean your suit. Can't clean those eyeballs."
Yeah. Oh, man. And it all smells like coffee. Yeah. God.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Well, listen, where can people find you? Because you do a bunch of different stuff. You're not just doing the shows in Salt Lake. You're doing a Sirius XM. You're always active on Twitter. Where can everyone find your stuff?
Let's see. So just at Brian Dunseth on social media. And then, we got RSL. Got a Fox game this weekend. Seattle Sporting Kansas City. Got an ESPN game in a couple weeks back down here. Orlando against Atlanta. And then I'm with
a big one?
The Meat Hooks, Tony Miola. I'm with him Monday through Friday.
Big
Jersey's finest.
Yeah, Sirius XM, channel 157. What is it, 4 to 7 East Coast?
Carney legend, Tony Miola.
The great state of New Jersey.
Yeah. Nice impression, actually.
And yes, and Brian, he's a great follow on Twitter, so make sure you stay connected to him.
Catch him at a Third Wave coffee shop in Salt Lake.
Foodie capital of the world.
Yeah. Oh, he's also lies a lot. Thanks again for doing the show, man.
Brian, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it very much.
This is fun.
You want to do the ending?
Will this be the ending of an episode? I don't know. It might be.
Just in case.
Just in case.
So we yell the Cooligans. You'll know when to do it.
Yeah, we yell it at the end of our show. It's just our moniker, right?
Okay.
So with that said, for Brian Dunseth, my name is Christian Polanco.
And I'm Alexis Guerreros. And together, what are we? The Cooligans!
What's up? It's the world champion, Judah Friedlander, and you're watching the Cooligans. Why? Because you're cool. This is what winners look like right here, man.
I mean, you're looking at us.
Right now with my legs, I just juggled the ball 80,000 times.
You missed it.
Yeah.
He's been playing keepy uppy since I met him.
Yep, look faster, guys.
Go Team USA.